Good morning, Munchkins. It's Dad's back again, and the title of this rant is "The Crusades." It's like deja vu all over again. So this one was originally written about 6 months ago, but it was not done to video. So I thought I'd put this one to video. If you like what you hear, as always, please hit the share button. If you love what you hear, hit the subscribe button. That helps me to help you. All right, let's get it on. Mark Twain famously remarked that history doesn't repeat itself, it just rhymes. The exception to Twain's adage is being seen in the current Islamic reconquest of Europe. This reconquest looks more like a repeat than a rhyme. For European immigration can be defining as nothing less as an invasion, and this isn't the first time. To understand my use of Mark Twain's adage requires some background knowledge of the history of the European conquest, which of course takes us to a review of the Crusades. Part and parcel of the progressive re-education camp we call our educational system is a complete rewrite of the falsification of the history of the Crusades. The progressive objective is to paint the Crusades as a European Christian conquest of Muslim lands. The progressive endgame is to destroy the moral underpinnings of the West and to delegitimize Christianity in the minds of her citizens. Once Europeans are persuaded that their lands were acquired by illegitimate means, the moral thing to do would be to give those lands back to the descendants of those from whom the land was stolen. This is the end game of the progressive leadership of much of Europe. Of course, lying is de rigueur for progressives. The only thing that is universally true with progressives is that they will lie and rewrite history to fit the product they are selling incessantly, without fail, and around the clock. The only principle they hold is that they hold no principles. Of course, the progressive premise that the Crusades were a European Christian conquest of Muslim lands is completely false. Let me provide a brief history of the Crusades. The proof is in the pudding, or as they say now, let me provide the receipts. The Crusades were initiated by Pope Urban II in 1096, after 7 centuries of Islamic invasion into Christian lands. Beginning in 632 AD, Islamic armies invaded Christian Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Portugal, Spain, France, Sicily, Italy, Palestine, Libya, Turkey, and Armenia. By 1096, 2/3 of Christendom was under the cross and the crescent. All of these Islamic conquests took place before Pope Urban II called on the First Crusade to roll back the advance of Islam. And note that this invasion was not just about conquering lands. It was about civilizational destruction. When Islam conquered Christian lands, Christians were given 3 choices: convert to Islam, remain Christian, and pay exorbitant taxes, or die. Pope Urban II received numerous reports of Christian pilgrims being robbed and murdered on pilgrimages to Jerusalem by Seljuk Turks. When the Seljuk Turks took control of Jerusalem, they barred Christians from making pilgrimages, I cannot pronounce that word, to the holy city. Byzantine Emperor Alexios I wrote Pope Urban II letters reporting that the Turks destroyed Christian altars, then circumcised Christians and threw their blood on the baptismal fonts. This desecration could not go unchecked. Winston Churchill declared war on Hitler's Germany to save Western civilization. Donald Trump bombed Iran's nuclear sites to save Western civilization. Pope Urban II was faced with a civilizational threat, no different from that of Trump or Churchill. It was fight or die. Like Churchill and Trump, Pope Urban II knew that Western civilization was itself at risk. Unlike Churchill and Trump, he didn't have the planes to drop the bombs. In fact, remarkably enough, he didn't have any military at all at his disposal. In hindsight, he had something far more miraculous than drop bombs. He was the first world leader to put together a multilateral effort to stop an invasion. Pope Urban was able to persuade the leadership of Christian nations who were constantly at war with each other to stop their infighting and deal with the civilizational threat posed to all of Christendom. The Pope was able to persuade France, England, Burgundy, Italy, and Normandy to come together in the First Crusade. Somewhere around 75,000 Christians responded to the call, and by 1099, they were able to take back Jerusalem. The first ruler of Jerusalem, Godfrey of Bouillon, sold all that he had to go to the fight. He refused to wear a crown of gold, saying, "No man should wear a crown of gold when Christ wore a crown of thorns." Raymond IV, Count of Toulouse, sold his entire fortune of 400,000 silver marks to fund the Crusades. These men did not set out to be conquerors. They set out to liberate Christendom. They risked their lives and fortune in much the same way as the American signers of the Declaration of Independence. There was a total of 7 military campaigns that we call the Crusades. each with varying levels of success. The Crusades were a just Christian response to Islamic aggression. And thank goodness for the courage of Pope Urban II and his Crusaders. If not for the Crusades, think about how different our world would be. Without the Crusades, there would be no Renaissance, no Reformation, no universities, no women's suffrage, no Mozart, no Shakespeare, no Beethoven, and for damn sure no Albert Einstein, Robert Oppenheimer, Edward Teller, or Enrico Fermi. All of those guys were Jewish or Catholic scientists who were instrumental in the development of the atomic bomb. If not for the Crusaders, there would have been no American Revolution, no development of representative forms of government in the West. There'd be no freedom of speech, no right to bear arms, and for sure no freedom of religion, only the imposition of Sharia law. But for sure there would have been one institution that would have flourished if not for the Crusaders, and that would have been the institution of slavery. The Islamic slave trade existed for 11 centuries before the transatlantic slave trade even existed. The trans-Saharan slave trade removed 6 to 10 million Africans from their homelands over those centuries. Roughly 20% of them died in transit. The Arab-Muslim slave trade had the additional barbaric feature of castration, which they used to prevent slaves from reproducing and intermingling with the general population. 6 out of 10 of the 8 to 10-year-old boys who suffered this procedure bled to death on the spot. Progressive professors will never inform you that trans-Saharan slaves suffered this barbarity and that transatlantic slaves did not. Castration was simply not practiced in the transatlantic slave trade. This was a gruesome practice that was unique to the trans-sub-Saharan slave trade. Nor will these professors inform you that the slave trade still persists to this day in Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. The practice has been completely eliminated in the Christian West. Nor will progressives inform you that it was the Christian West that outlawed slavery. It was British Christian abolitionists like William Wilberforce and John Newton who persuaded Great Britain to send the Royal Navy to sail the seas to stop the slave trade. Between 1840 and 1850, around 14% of Great Britain's Royal Navy was involved in stopping slave ships. It was American Christian abolitionists like John Brown, John Adams, and Frederick Douglass who persuaded America to end slavery and to sacrifice over 600,000 men on the field of battle in places like Vicksburg, Shiloh, Gettysburg, and Manassas to put an end to this foul practice. None of that happens without the sacrifice of Pope Urban's Crusaders. But fast forward to the present day where we find the progressive leadership of European nations attempting to go back to the future. The progressive leadership of countries like Great Britain, France, Sweden, and Germany have welcomed immigration from Muslim countries against the wishes of their native populations. The French Christian population has gone from 63% in 1970 to 25% at present. Paris is filled with mosques and now has entire neighborhoods under siege where Sharia law is being enforced. The United Kingdom closed 50 churches and opened 423 mosques. Germany's Christmas markets are now armed fortresses designed to prevent attacks from immigrants offended by Christmas. The foreigners who reside among you will rise above you higher and higher, but you will sink lower and lower. They will lend to you, but you will not lend to them. They will be the head, but you will be the tail. All these curses will come on you. They will pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the Lord your God and observe the commands and decrees he gave you. That was from Deuteronomy 28:43 through 45. Apparently, Moses wrote Deuteronomy with an eye towards warning of the risks associated with unrestricted immigration. It is self-evident that some cultures have provided the superior result in terms of the quality of life of their citizens. Consider the following Muslim-majority countries and their respective per capita income worldwide rankings, and I'll just walk you through them. Bangladesh ranked 155th, Afghanistan 191st, Azerbaijan 110th, Chad 182nd, Egypt 139th, Indonesia 122nd, Iran 105th, Iraq 103rd, Libya 91st. It's self-evident that the culture of these countries is incompatible with economic success. It's also self-evident that no nation can survive unrestricted immigration. Some cultures are simply incompatible with the West. Since all law is based on a moral code, only one moral code could be supreme. There will be a winner and there will be a loser. There is no middle ground. Europe is discovering this the hard way, again. May we heed her example and avoid the need for a bloody crusade on the American soul. Peace out, everybody. Ciao.